course, I wouldn't stop there. I feel like all of this, everything that led to my journey with art started back in Triple IT with those scrap aluminium frames. I knew that I wanted to do something, and when I proposed it to the team, they said, no, does anyone have any doable ideas, any practical ideas, any realistic ideas? And I mean, they could have just said no. I mean, hey, that's not going to work out. But instead, I was completely ignored, and they responded, the seniors, they responded by saying, does anyone have any practical ideas or something like that? Something along those lines. I quit the committee immediately, the team, without saying anything. And I suppose I've always, at some level, I've been driven to prove a point, maybe, to prove something. And there I was like, okay, aluminium scrap, found it, gotta make something out of it. Just lying here, it looks cool, let's make an eagle, let's make a bird, let's make a sculpture, let's make something huge. I did not see that level of engagement which I was expecting. I was like, okay, there are a lot of people going to come and things are going to be exciting in some ways, but I'm very grateful that two of my friends, Shubham, Vishal, and one of my other friends, actually a couple of people did support me in some ways, and I had to ask permission for the dean, and all of that negotiating was happening as a group. And even the making process itself was assisted by, like, I was assisted. I wasn't alone. Thank you. But as it got later and later, it became very clear to me that I was the only one who really, really wanted to do this. And people were there, but I don't know how they felt about it, but the way I looked at it is that, okay, they're here to assist me, but eventually I'm going to hit this point where I'm on my own. And soon enough that point came. I lost track of time. I wasn't really eating, or I don't know what I ate, I don't know what I was drinking, water, I have no idea. There was only the work. There was the metal, there was the wire, there was my hand, the pliers, and it was shivering like this, but I just kept going at it, turning, twisting, just building it out of the flow. There was really no plan, no structure. Things were just emerging, and there was this inner drive or inner faith, but I won't say inner or outer because I don't think I was there either. I know that my body was going through all of this. I was hunched over a bit, my back hurt, my body hurt all over, but it's a different kind of energy. There's something very relaxed about the whole thing. I was very calm in some ways, but also very energized and excited. I think that's where it all started. And surprisingly, it had to start with the peacock. Blues and greens. Well, yeah, so that's where it started. That's when I knew that this is it. This is what I want to do. I want to get so absorbed in the creative process that everything's gone. I'm not there. Basically, yes, I'm not there. It's a very strange thing, because is that what life's about? Because you need to be here in the present moment to say that I'm alive, I'm here, I'm experiencing this. And suddenly it was so weird for me, so paradoxical, that I wanted to be in a state where I'm not there, I'm not here. It's just happening. It was hard for me to understand back then, but let's say I did not even recognize it. And that flow state has happened multiple times again in similar creative projects, art, poetry, meditation, different kind of meditation. Let's say art or poetry is also one of the ways of performing that intense, very focused activity. And this space, all of this, including the flow, all of it. This is also the outcome of one of those experiences, and I've personally never actually experienced a lot of hate. There's been a few people like, hey, what the fuck, who do you think you are, and so on, but no one's ever told me, oh, that's your dream, oh, that's your plan, no, fuck it, you can't do it. There's always been this idea of grow up, or this is not the time, or things like that, but outright hate, like, I mean, I can't say that either. Some people have wished death upon me, but I don't know if it was out of hate or out of love. Yeah. But I don't know how to explain it. That intense hatred that, oh, this person, this work, this existence, this presence, I wish it weren't there. I wish, like, that sort of animosity, I feel like, at least personally, I've never experienced it. And I'm very grateful for that no one is that bothered by me or troubled by me. But with respect to the closest I can, at least in this moment, what I'm feeling is that the most hate I've received, not hate, but let's say brick walls or blockages. The people who've supported me most actually have in many ways also placed those obstacles in my path. And I'm talking about my family mostly. Whenever that outburst of art and expression was there, it was very alive and very raw, very honest. I think it scared them. I'm not sure if it scared them, but at some level, I think it has been scary. It's been a bit of a traumatic experience for all of us involved. And because of that, they've covered it up. And I mean this quite literally, either with respect to destroying my art, or insisting that I paint over it, or just simple comments like, oh my god, that is so disturbing, can you not make stuff like that, can you please just make something aesthetically pleasing. And I don't know why, but I guess the vigor of the movement, the liveliness, the sense of being full of life and energy, somehow, I don't know why, but I feel like that has never really gone across to them. They've looked at my works as maybe an oddity, or hey, you're just seeking attention, that's the thing, you need to get diagnosed, that sort of a response. But for some reason it has never really stirred some, I don't know if it has, but if it has, this is how they've responded to it. I was hoping that it stirs something deep inside, that it changes something in a very fundamental way, that for me, this is what life's about, this sort of movement, this sort of freedom, this being so alive, being so here that you're not there. Complete presence, but whole absence. And somehow I get the feeling that has never really touched them. I don't know how many people it has touched, and I don't know how to differentiate what kind of people this can touch, what kind of people it cannot touch. There's no way of gauging this, and the more I've tried to understand this phenomena, the more I feel like I just have to leave it. I just have to leave it be. Like, I just focus on my thing, do my thing, and it will touch whoever it has to touch. Whatever needs to happen will happen. So the reason I'm saying all of this right now is because we're in this space, and for a while there has been a lot of trouble. Let's say this space has been. My grandfather does yoga here, and he was a bit upset by how I painted this space. For me, I feel like this was a great work situation because the way I was painting it, I was in the flow. I was in a flow state. I can't say I was, right? The flow state was there. It was happening. So that means the sense of this is one wall and the floor is another plane. These two are separate planes that need to be respected. That sort of dimensional thought process wasn't very conscious. That means I was going to go like this. I was going to move, just ignoring, because let's say my body faces this dimension like this, and my body would face the lower dimension like this. Right, so there is this sense of similarity because the difference between this plane and this plane is countered by the difference between this posture and this posture. So that means, they form a set. This is one set and this is one set, and through this interaction they're equivalent. What that means is that I'm not saying the dimensionality is not there, but since I'm not there, whether the dimensionality is there or not is irrelevant, because I need to be there to interact with the dimensionality. But when my identity dissolves into the moment, when it acquires a certain eternal status, then honestly even space itself is very distorted, because the awareness is so intense and focused that it creates the perception of space. The perception of space happens like in a field, and it creates that field only for that moment. And as it is moving, I don't know how to explain this, but the best way is like, in relative terms, if this is moving and this is still, then there's movement. But as this is moving, if both are in movement, then there's a different kind of stillness. It is different from just, it's not this. It's a very alive kind of stillness. It's moving, but I will look like a retard to people who have no idea what I'm saying, but if you have experienced this state of consciousness that I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. And so I feel like this is a very disorienting experience when you enter a space like this. This dimension, if you see, it's relatively untouched. Like, I haven't painted over it. And for instance, this particular space, there has been like a sort of gradient, and many people might associate it with Pollock. And I actually do owe a lot to Pollock, because I'm sure a lot of other people have been practicing gestural movements, especially in Japanese calligraphy, and even drawing on sand, for example, writing script in sand. All of these have those elements. But coming from this direction, I think when I looked at Pollock's work, and I've only seen it online, I've never had the opportunity to see it in person. I really want to. But I guess I just wanted to embody that spirit, and once you start doing that, you realize the timeless nature of this activity. It's not that you're copying Pollock, because to copy Pollock, Pollock would need to be a presence that existed or was embodied sometime before you are embodying this presence. But when you disappear, your identity disappears. Your identity that is bound by time disappears. So all of these aspects, the temporal aspect, the spatial aspect, as all of these concepts don't exist in that moment, it's very easy to, let's say, it's a very fertile ground for originality, authenticity, rawness, honest expression. And I think that's something that transcends time, and this is how I will justify if someone says, hey, you're copying Pollock, then I don't know what to say, because this is how, maybe I have nothing against copying, but this is literally the process that is occurring within me. So would you call that copying? This is me asking you back. If you're really understanding what I'm saying, then is it really copying? Am I copying somebody who existed before me? Am I really an entity or a presence or being bound by time? Okay, so I wish I could have done this live, but unfortunately I don't have the necessary confidence to be able to do that. And I don't even know if people are interested. I don't know why anyone would give a shit about all of this. But I do know that I want to make my art practice sustainable. And I'll just have to do what it takes. I'm going to play around and see what works for me and what is getting the resources that I need into my life. How do I align these? And this is just one of the experiments, let's call it that. This is an experiment to see, is this going to help? Is this going to help? That's all I'm thinking, because I have some space and time right now to be able to direct my energies in these directions, to be aware and focused, and to observe whether this is going to work. Is this going to help me? So I would just like to show you a little bit of the space. This is pretty much the entrance, and it's really messy because I haven't used the space, and that is the other thing. My granddad wanted to paint all over it, and as you can see, he's already started. And this happened in my room as well. This particular space is called the sock, and the one in my room is called the catalyst. So, and notice the marked contrast between this plane and this plane, and that's only because of the dirt. When I had finished it that day, there was really, this level of contrast wasn't there. So the colors were equally saturated, and it was almost like, if you can see this particular mark, the plane, it almost places this corner, this vertex, into an anamorphic sort of arrangement. No matter where the viewer is, it really does not look, it did not look like a corner. There was a bending of space to the perception, especially if you entered here with an altered state of consciousness. Like, that's it. My brother, for example, I don't know, for some people it might be a bit of a terrifying experience because it was red, gory, there were eyes, and if you can see the way the brushstrokes are, they go like this, they go up the wall very effortlessly. They go all the way up, because normally when things go up, we're used to this idea of gravity, physics, and spatiality itself is embedded with so many properties that makes space or Euclidean space what it is. And when you perform movements that sort of, I won't say they defy it, but they obey it so well that they seem to defy it. If you catch that, if you know what I'm saying, they obey it so well that they seem to defy it. When you reach that sweet spot, that balance, things become very confusing for some people and very disorienting at some times, but it's also it has a very calming effect. When there is this expanse laid out. And the other thing that I want to mention about these flow states are that the notion of time I've already discussed is very different, the spatial aspect. So when I was painting this, there was no furniture, there were no things in the room other than what I needed to paint, obviously. And of course my body. And I guess I like to paint naked, I will be honest. I don't want to wear clothes when I'm painting sometimes. And this is one of those moments. So that also meant that when you enter into the flow state, the concept of energy, tiredness, day, night, all of those are very vaguely present. They're sort of like at the back of your mind, or like a phantom, a lingering presence, but not something of actual importance or significance. So that was sort of how it was. What I'm trying to say is that when these occur, that means there's no getting out of it. Once you enter, it's like you're in. There is really no way out. So all of these works happen in one, I won't even call it linear time, because it's a bit confusing to explain, but they happen at a stretch. I start and then somewhere I stop, and that's it. Which means a lot of the works that I do, I don't have the sense of being able to afford to go back to it, come back to it. And I mean, I do, but in a very different way. And so usually I would have started it maybe in the morning. I would have painted all throughout the day, throughout the night, and I would have continued in the morning, and then painted till the afternoon, painted till the evening. And after that, I would have probably slept and not been able to move for a while. I mean, I'm not very proud of it, because I guess I'm abusing the body in some ways, and I wish it were different, but sometimes I also wish that my body were more resilient to this sort of pace, this sort of methodology of, this way of working, because this is something that I really enjoy. And in terms of art making, if I want to take this further, then this is the kind of process that I will be following. So, well, this is very silly, but let's try maybe following a brush stroke that I can see. So think about how your handedness defines the brush stroke. Are you right-handed? Are you left-handed? Okay, we're not even going to talk about how the paint itself is influencing it. Why does it stop there? Or if it hasn't stopped, then why is it going this way? What was there? How would I have been? I guess all of this comes from my interest in forensics to some level, and reconstructing a scene, like a piece of artwork, as if it was a crime scene. And I think many people, especially in our age, are not just conversant, but also they can apply these skill sets, because that is the sort of drama that we're consuming. When you look at this flat surface, anyone who has painted knows that maybe this was created by a bucket or something of the sorts. because it's obviously a flat surface, and it's quite flat, so the wetness had collected over here, the moisture. That's why it's leaving this sort of a mark. And this movement, this circular movement, implies that probably the bottom was relatively circular or elliptical, and the way these marks have been dragged across, it implies that this was still happening, when the paint was a bit wet. So I would guess that, okay, this is a bucket. And this is the sort of sensitivity, and this is just a superficial level, honestly. But when you're more sensitive, the thinking process will stop and the colors speak directly. I wouldn't claim that it's synesthesia, but I guess it takes a little bit of investment, carefully paying attention. This reminds me of the texture of bubble wrap, or since I painted this, I think I know that this is a yoga mat, but it's very similar to bubble wrap as well. So I like following the brush strokes, and especially in this area. This is one of my favorite areas in the entire work of art, in the sock, because these brush strokes are very alive, and the way they move and blend into each other is something that I've always wanted to do, but I had never been able to do it. And this was probably the first time, because I never had such a large canvas to work with. You can see that the paint is getting drier and drier, and I wish this wall was also how do you call it? Is it censored? My grandfather painted this white over it because he was a bit too disturbed by the bending of space of sorts. The way that the space would bend probably disturbed him or disoriented him, and he decided to paint over it. I don't know what to say. I mean, I'm happy that my work is still showing through, but I'm very sorry, and I'm a bit sad that it disoriented him. It did not make him feel alive, or it did not create any sense of awe. So these colors were very saturated, highly saturated when I painted them, so it would have been a bit overwhelming. But anyways, so the black is obviously spray paint. There is a different, the blacks, the blues. You can see the textural quality. So when I'm looking at this brush stroke, the movement of the body becomes very apparent. Goes here, it can continue, but no, the blue comes back and moves like this, comes back. When you look at what is happening in this sort of movement, that sort of quick, circular, vigorous motion, it's a bit dizzying. If you've seen a lot of Indian dance performances, the movements will seem very familiar, and I don't know if I can take credit for all of these movements, because like I said, I wasn't there and these things were happening, but I really enjoy moving like that, and sort of playful creation, I mean, I'm also enjoying how the white is covered, but the colors are still showing through somewhat faintly, but they're still showing through, and I like that as well. So that's about the space, and yeah, let me know what you think. I'm not sure what response I'm expecting, if I'm expecting a response, but yeah, that's what I wanted to do. and this was honestly one of the most fun experiences of my life. Just painting, and it's not such a big room if you think about it. I mean, it's big for me because I've never really had the opportunity to play around in such large spaces. It's very rare. But it's also very fun to just be, you know, to hold a few paintbrushes and paint with your entire body without any blockages, without stopping yourself. There is a sort of nakedness, and there's also violence in that nakedness. Everything is very alive, and the space itself comes to life, because afterwards a lot of art, I made a lot of art in this room, and I never had to once think about, oh, is this paint going to drip on the floor, is it going to damage something, is the stain going to show. Like, for instance, all of this was made by another artwork or made during another artwork. I had placed the canvas over here, the board, and I let it drip down like this. So the space becomes very alive in that sense. Things are changing, there's paint coming in. This circle as well, this happened much later. My granddad was complaining about how that he's not able to focus in this room. When he enters this room, he just gets completely disoriented. And I said, okay, here's a circle. Here's focus on this point itself. Stand here. Know that. I felt like just putting this concentric circle changed the energy in the entire room. There was suddenly something to focus on, and it became so obvious that even if you're not looking at it with your, physical eye, the presence itself influenced or changed how the energies were directed and flowing in this room. So I will end with this anthill thing. It's one of the most fascinating things I've ever seen. I could stare at it for hours. The way it is constructed, and I don't even know what was on top of it for the ants to, or termites, or I'm not sure what insect made this, or if it was an insect. I'm not sure exactly how this happened, but it's marvelous. It really is a thing of beauty, great beauty. And I'm pointing this out because I'm hoping that my art can be as natural, honest, as coarse but sophisticated as this piece of, this wondrous. I love these. The way it's going like that, and there's a sense of eroticism in this for me, and I mean this at not just a visual but even textural and conceptual level. And when I look at the way the branches are growing, when the way the spider webs are constructed, the way that minerals and striations are formed in, trapped in rocks, that's what I want. Like, I want my art to be like that. It's not a representation of beauty, it's beauty itself. And I'm moving towards that every moment. That spontaneity, that relevance, that particular kind of suitability, that sense that this is how it's supposed to be. There's something very right about these sort of works. It just feels like, yes, this makes perfect sense. This is how it's supposed to be, or I wouldn't have it otherwise. And it's very exciting to be in the presence of something like that. And I feel that sense in around me, when the fungi are growing, or the nodes of the tree or the leaves are branching out. It just makes perfect sense. Yes, this branch was like this, and obviously when it's growing like this, the wind, it just clicks. Something clicks, and it just feels very complete. And it's complete because it's in progress. It's growing, it's becoming, and that's why it's perfect. Because it responded in the most suitable manner. I don't know how else to explain this, but there's something very right. There's very correct about it. It just feels like the correct response, and I'm not sure if my art has that quality, but many times I perceive that quality in my art, and I'm hoping that through these sort of dialogues I can the bird was chirping. Yeah, through these sorts of dialogues I can share this perception of the rightness of, for example, I just noticed trip right now, and what are you going to do about it? Are you going to measure this distance? Are you going to study the proportion numbers? What if I measure this drip to this drip, and if there are other drips over here, measure this proportion, compare these two, are they in some sort of series? Is there some sort of harmonic progression embedded in these chaotic elements? Like, are you going to put everything under a magnifying glass and search for patterns? Because what you're measuring is obviously prone to some error, and you can find that pattern which you're looking for. If you're looking for the golden ratio, or phi or whatever number you're looking for, you will find it. At least in my experience, I've noticed that it's very easy to find these patterns in everything. But it's not about looking for patterns, it's about, I think it has a lot to do with acceptance that yes, this happened, and everything that is happening up till this moment is so perfect that this is no exception to that. There is perfection embedded in all of this, and that's the kind of sense that I want to develop through my art making practice, and by talking about it in this manner, self-promoting, I'm hoping that I can share this sense, and I don't know, start a dialogue maybe. Do you guys, or do you beings, think that this sense is necessary? Does it have any importance in your own life? Have you felt this? Has this done anything for you? Has it contributed to your existence in a very profound way? And I'm asking all of these questions because honestly, I will be honest, I'm starting at the answer. I feel like yes. This is amazing. This needs to be there, and I'm so grateful for this particular tendency to appreciate this sort of perfection in everything. And that is my answer. And by asking these questions, I'm hoping to elicit or draw out the similar answers. And at least I'm very delusional about this, and I feel like no, there is no way that anyone can give me a different answer or an opposing answer, because all of these contradictions can be unified in this state of consciousness. What seems as an apparent contradiction feels like it's right, it's perfect. There's like this loop embedded. It defies logic to a certain extent. I'll say it's perfect. It's not perfect, I'll be like, oh yeah, you think it's not perfect? That's perfect. And that cycle goes on, and I feel like at the end of the day, even if you don't want to think in absolutes, even if you want to keep yourself open to the gray area, when you enter into the gray area, you find that it has an absolute-like quality. There is a certain dogmatic sense to all of this. I can say, hey, I don't really exist, I might exist, I neither exist nor exist. Like, I can play all of these games, but the feeling, the intention, the primal cause, the primal source, the progenitor, I don't know how to describe it, but it's the source. It's very undeniable. It's it's not something that you can debate. So these are all the things that I want to point towards and embody and capture in my art. That sense of I'm sensing something, I'm responding to it, I'm using my body as a machine of sorts, but also a very sensitive instrument. It's very subtle and sensitive. For example, listening, feeling all of the shifts, the wind movements, the temperature, if a drop of a bead of sweat falls down from my cheek, using that sensual nature, that the humidity, the scents, using all of this, absorbing it completely in its richness, that density, just soaking it all in and allowing that energy to flow through you, directing your motions. And it's sort of like also, I don't know if people will like this, but it has this aspect of being obedient. And it's a very different kind of obedience, because I feel like I can rebel against every entity by being obedient to this, that, this, that. Complete obedience to this, that is in itself the source of revolution or rebellion towards everything else. Because there is no everything else, but that's for another time. I sound so confused when I say time. Anyways, so this is some. I will talk about. I will say, oh, this is what I want to do with my art. This is what I want to do with my art, and I guess at some level, I don't have to say it. You can extrapolate all of those aspects from just this one interaction, but it's fun. It's fun to show different sides to the same thing, all the multitude of faces that something has. And I think that's what I'm going to do right now. I've been talking from the moment I started speaking, or even in my silence, I've been saying the same thing over and over and over and over again. But I'm trying to play with these mirrors, because I'm not able to express that itself. Not through, because I won't be there. If that expressing is happening, then I'm not there. So in all my efforts, I'm just playing with those mirrors, smoke and mirrors game of trying to get that across. I have no idea why I'm holding this. It's really dusty over here, and I just washed this, so I didn't want to put it down. So yeah, thank you for listening, and if you have any questions about my art, you want to know about how I'm pricing them, how I'm selling them, am I selling them, what is my presence in, how's my digital presence like, am I mediating my telepresence, what is the whole point of, I don't know, creating a presence in, let's say, a metaverse like space or virtual realities. I do want to get to all of these things, but I feel like there's a little more focus on developing my own art practice. I feel like I just want to go deeper into myself, want to bring back or express more of what is there, more art, and honestly, I'm a person who's more focused on this, and I feel like that's the only way that I will quote unquote make it. And I guess there is also the sense of narcissism, or the sense of maybe people will think it's egotistic, but I feel like I cannot focus on anything else. Everything else is just embedded in me, and I've learned only through myself, only by studying myself, observing myself, and honestly, that's all I'll ever be able to do. And that's out of choice, maybe, willingness. I'm only willing to learn about myself, study about myself. And that also includes my relationships with everything that is not me. So all of these investigations are going to be conducted like this, and hopefully I will have the courage to do this live, because I don't know, I just want to gauge whether there is a space for this sort of dialogue. And if there isn't, then I'm going to continue doing this for myself and if anyone's interested. But if there happens to be a space, then I want to also take in that courage and let it soak in and be able to embody that presence of saying, listen, I have something to say. And I've been trying to say this for so long, but yeah. So hopefully I will be able to do this in live, in person, on different sort of platforms, and not feel ashamed about trying to maybe promote myself or generate interest or whatever. So thank you for listening.